are gonna get because of the sun.
I can see it from here.
Okay. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
All right. You're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is the March 26th, 2025 meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. Calling to order at 5:30. We have meeting minutes that were sent out from the last meeting, which was the March 3rd meeting. That were sent out for review and stuff. Are there any questions, comments on those, corrections? Entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's a vote. Next item up is a design update from Tecton and the boards and stuff that I know we have up already in some of the facilities around town.
Yep, yeah, so we, a couple weeks ago, we put together some informational boards that were scattered around town. Those have been printed and placed. So those are in several public locations throughout the community. We also, over the past week, put together the trifold brochure, put the final dot across on the I's and crossed the final T's this morning and got that off to the chief. So he was coordinating with a print shop to get those printed and distributed as well. Aside from that, we've just put together the presentation for after this building committee meeting for follow-up to the community charrette that we held in, I believe it was in January in high school. And that's it so far.
Okay. Next, OPM updates from
Sure, there's a
Linda?
couple of things I want to just discuss. The first one is obviously we talked about the whole process of the budget and what the tariffs may be taking on and some of the impacts. So to ensure that we have coverage and to cover some of the incidentals that we don't know about, we're making sure within our budget that we're going to cover it through an allowance portion of it. As we progress, we'll get into more detail on the presentation of how we're carrying it and how that expenditure may or may not affect the overall cost of the project. We did take an effect. What that impact would be to the tax burden is very minimum at best. And then the other portion of it is just we're in the process of, over the next couple of weeks, organizing the test pits over at the site. We did the borings already. The test pits will just give us a little more indication of gradation and water levels at that point. And Connor's in the process of organizing that work as we speak right now. Our big item is just preparing, obviously, for the next several weeks prior to town meetings, so we can get out there and give everybody the same information and be transparent about everything that we're providing.
All right, so the last time we were on site was just doing borings?
Yeah.
Do we have results back?
Yeah, they came back favorable. So
Okay.
during after the boring results, we showed some resistance on a couple of them. Resistance just means there's some large rock, not necessarily ledge, but we did indicate the depth of them there is well below where we think we're going to have to do the excavation and foundation and footing work. I've worked and discussed with Matt the allowances that we'll put in place for large boulders and trench rock that we may find during the construction portion of it. So as that information gets evolved with the test pits that'll occur, the geotech engineer will get the information enough to be able to support the building and how that'll be done through the structural portion of it.
Okay. All right, gonna go through. Any other questions from,
Is part of that an environmental assessment?
Yeah, so that's a separate, the geotech typically doesn't do that. We'll have a separate organization do that. I don't foresee any major issues over in there. I mean, it's not like there's significant wetlands, and
Right.
so we'll do our due diligence just to make sure that we have it reviewed prior to construction.
Awesome, thank you.
I think we have that phase one on file too, that was pretty recent.
Both of the demo?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think that, gave a good idea of what could or couldn't be there.
Awesome.
Phase one has been completed. I haven't seen that. Can the committee get that to me? More of an FYI for the moment, but we'll want to include all that information into our bid documents when we go to procure a contractor.
So our goal, just the last part I just want to talk about is our schedule we're revising right now based on town meeting. We all anticipate, a favorable bid, vote. And at that point, we'll be able to really move forward with the architect to get design documents ready. We're gonna be basically revising some of the dates associated with the schedule. We'll provide that over the next couple of weeks based on the timelines it's gonna take to get their portion of it done, the bidding portion of it, and then try to get the contractor under contract, so. And that's it.
Are you still thinking end of 2027 or?
Yeah, anywhere between 10 months from the time we actually let them go on the design. Then it's typically 6 weeks of bidding. After that, it's a month of award, so then we're figuring anywhere between 18 and 20 months, depending on, some of the construction process. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Next item up is just our usual open discussion points that committee might want to bring up or look at, have us discuss or anything. If anybody has anything else at the moment?
I was just wondering, after tonight's meeting, do we have an idea for other ones yet? I know the chief was working on
Oh,
some.
He was, and he was reaching out to a lot of different organizations. I think we were trying to have it, tonight here so that any, the public would like to see the existing facility to be able to do that.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, the updated information on the drawings that the architect's gonna be providing is gonna be enlightening to the community as how nice the building is actually coming together and the exterior elevations. And that being said, I think our next one, we should, the proximity should be, another location within Auburn that tries to draw a little bit more of the community in there, just for the public outreach and the information purposes. So, but he has talked about a couple of different locations, and he's finalizing that as we speak.
Okay. That's all I got.
Next item is public comment. Don't know. Anything? Nope. Okay, so I guess that wraps it up for here. I don't know. I put on your tentative for April 7th for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think right now, based on, we're always looking for feedback from the community. I think the televised presentation that we're doing, we're hoping to get a little bit more feedback. It just gives us the opportunity to add to any frequently asked questions and information to the public, so that we're being very transparent about it. So our goal is to hopefully get some feedback, and we'll provide even more documentation or answer some questions that may be formatted over the next several weeks.
Okay.
Did we at one point mention an online, someone mentioned an online poll to get the feedback? Because I think the participation in the feedback from the initial charrette was good. Is that still something that we would consider at
A
now?
second one you're talking about, like a?
Either, yeah, or something online, right, for people to, voice their opinions without fear of being in the spotlight.
So the initial one we had did have online polling, so that was part of that process.
Yeah, is that something we would like to entertain? Just kind of open question to anybody here. You think that we would get more involved in?
I think it would make sense if it was tied to some kind of presentation or something like that.
Like a
where,
poll question.
because there's contact information on the committee site, right? So it's like anybody that had a question is more than welcome to reach out to us, directly or have feedback or things like that. So it's, we're certainly open to every channel for that. I think throwing up, I don't know what the questions would be, I guess, if we had a good set of like, hey, we want your input on this particular aspect or that particular aspect,
No.
then definitely, I just don't know what that would be today, but if we do come up with those ideas, certainly I think it's something we should do.
I think after our next public forum, ideally what I'd love to see is just a collaborative meeting with the architect and the committee on the presentation of town meeting. I want to be able to be concise, consistent, and provide, you know, information, because I'm sure there'll be questions at town meeting about something to do with the project. And just, you know, we're trying to get those questions out there so people are hearing, you know, the questions and answers so that we're not wasting people's time either. But we want to be as informative as we can. Having that presentation for the town meetings is just going to be a better way to just, you know, transmit why the building is needed and what the cost impact is, because that's ultimately what a lot of residents, I'm sure, are concerned about.
I think it's important to have that for the public as well, because at least in my experience with these, because town meeting has to happen before the debt exclusion vote, and I was a town meeting member for a number of years, generally my position was always, it's not really up to me to decide because it's gonna go to a public vote. So most of these things would usually carry town meeting because, you know, it's hard to put yourself in a position to say, no, I'm gonna vote against this, you know, and not give the voters an opportunity to say yes or no on it. So I think having the same material available for the general public to say, hey, here's the presentation that we would give everybody if we could, right? I think that's the key there.
Essential.
Yeah,
And the trifold information that we'll have available too, I think will be,
yeah.
you know, informative for the community that comes out to the town meeting as well. And that's all I had.
Thank you.
All right, there's nothing else then at the moment. I mean, I think public forum wise, or maybe public, like another web, you know, comment section or survey and stuff, probably the next phase going along, there'll probably be a lot more opportunity for, you know, certain things, you know, planning, you know, might be putting in input and stuff as we're developing the design further, I can see. But, yeah, right now, I don't think, I agree, yeah. Not enough there.
Like, if anybody's watching, by all means, send us questions and comments.
I guess my only question to you guys would be, what's the cutoff point for stuff like that?
So typically, we like to have the last one just a week before the town meeting. That gives us enough time to digest any of the questions or concerns that might come in, be able to format it within the presentation for the town meeting. So. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else at the moment, then I think
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. So, right now tentatively, it's April 7th would be the next one. And then for those, if you could stay around for the public forum session at 6 o'clock, it'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Mics are hot, 5 seconds. You're live.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce you all to the Community Conversation Part 2 for the Auburn Fire Headquarters here in Auburn, Mass. My name is Matt Salad. I'm a project manager with Tecton Architects. With me tonight is Tyler Arshevsky, project designer from our office. Jeff McElroy, if he couldn't be here tonight, he's the director of public safety design at Tecton Architects. And along with us, we also have your OPM left field with Joe Sullivan. We have Alyssa, Connor, and Kevin as well from their firm representing left field. And this presentation is really a follow-up to a community charrette that we had conducted at the high school back in January, where we presented some ideas about what this new fire station in Auburn could be. We've received a lot of good feedback based on that presentation, and we've since then incorporated a lot of that feedback into the design. So this is really a presentation about the updates to the design based on that community feedback. But also for those that weren't at that presentation and want a little bit more information on the need and the process that we've gone through thus far, as well as what to look for in the future, we wanted to sort of rehash some of the main points that we had made in that initial presentation, just to refresh everybody's memory. So first I'm going to go through just some key deficiencies with the existing fire station, and when we're talking about that fire station, we're talking about the one over here at West Street, which is fire station number 2. There is no work at fire headquarters anticipated with this project. The site itself is certainly challenged. It's a building that is shared with the school administration at this time. It's also co-located with the middle school itself. The main points of egress off the site for fire response is directly onto West Street with only one point of exit. It's sort of a best practice for a fire station to have 2 points of egress off of the site. So that they can better respond if there's any congestion or traffic in their way. And it also has some topography issues. So these challenges make it very difficult for us to do any renovation work because of the shared uses on site, as well as how compact and tight the property is. Within the building itself, it's really just undersized. It doesn't serve the need for the department for a modern fire station. This was initially constructed many years ago as a school. It was renovated as a temporary solution to house this substation over 40 years ago. So right now the fire trucks are parked. These are multiple tens of tons of pounds of equipment that are housed on a floor that was designed for middle school children. So it really isn't made to support the vehicles and the equipment that the fire department needs in order to respond. It also has many substandard mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. There's no separation of contaminated space from clean space. We know over the past several decades the research in carcinogen exposure to firefighters returning from the scene to the fire floor. They bring a lot of nasty things back with them from a fire. These need to get decontaminated and cleaned, but there's always an inherent risk, and so we want to make sure that we're properly segregating those hazardous, those contaminated spaces from all the clean living quarters and office spaces that the firefighters live and work in day in and day out. And that's just not feasible in this current configuration in this building. We also don't have good gender equity within the building, so there's not adequate facilities or space for those facilities for female firefighters. And there's just a real lack of living and workspaces for these folks. So because of that, we engaged in a multi-year study to really analyze both fire stations as well as the police station. The result of those studies was ultimately to deem a new station was indeed needed, and that a new site would be a best solution for that. We've studied renovations and additions to both the fire headquarters, the existing station, the police station on multiple properties, several dozen parcels throughout the community, and ultimately landed on a parcel that we'll speak more to later in the presentation. So the project schedule, we've been working on this study since 2017. I know the town has been working on this even longer than that, so it's been well overdue. It culminated in 2023 with the purchase of a piece of property off Prospect Street. It was formerly the Chuck Steakhouse. That was appropriated at town meeting and purchased. The existing building has then since been demolished. We have then, since last fall, embarked on a pre-design process where we studied in great detail that site, went through a number of different design iterations, looked at ways that we can plan for future, and that'll ultimately culminate at town meeting on May 6th, and then ultimately with a debt exclusion vote to fund the construction of this facility this coming May 20th. Should we see a positive response by the community in approval to move forward with this project, we'd be looking at an approximate 10-month design phase. That includes 3 different phases: schematic design, where we really get into the details of spatial adjacencies, the fit and finish of the building. Then we get into design development, where we start developing some of the more technical details. And then ultimately, the construction documents phase, where we're putting together a detailed package of documents that a contractor will then bid on, and then provide a price. At each stage of this process, we will have a third-party estimator review all of our documents to make sure that we're in line with the project budget that was approved at town meeting. And if there are any deviations from that, we'll make sure that we have well enough time in advance to adjust the design to make sure that we're not going over budget. We really want to make sure that the project is staying on schedule and ultimately under budget throughout this entire process. Sometime early 2026, early spring, late winter, we would be putting the project out to bid, seeking bids from general contractors. That takes 6 to 8 weeks. And then from then, we would anticipate an 18-month construction schedule, allowing the fire department to then move into the new facility in 2027. So, as I had mentioned in January, we held a community conversation at the high school. We had went through a series of informational slides presenting the project, and then scattered a number of boards around the room, as well as an online survey that was run simultaneously with that exercise. And I want to run through just a brief overview of some of the results and some of the comments that we had heard from the community that ultimately drove updates to the design that we'll present tonight. So we asked 3 questions. We wanted to know about the community's thoughts on the aesthetic. What does a fire station mean to the town of Auburn? What should it look like? What should it feel like? We also wanted to look at the site design as we had presented it that night. You know, what do you like? What don't you like? What else should we consider? And then ultimately, we presented an initial conceptual design and wanted to take the temperature of the community on what they felt about that as well. Do you like the aesthetic? Do you like the look? Do you feel like we should go in a different direction or sort of stay the course? And this was an example of the board, some of the boards that we had scattered around the room, as well as the SurveyMonkey that we had linked online as well, where we had looked for what does a fire station look like in Auburn. We actually showed that through a couple of examples of other fire stations throughout the Commonwealth in northern Connecticut, seeking feedback on which of these sort of appealed to the community. Overwhelmingly, Lexington, Massachusetts, their fire headquarters, depicted on the top, was the favorite choice. It felt that that was an appropriate, modern, but New England aesthetic that felt like it would fit well within the community. Trailing behind those was the Greenfield, Massachusetts fire headquarters, and then the Bloomfield Center Fire District, station number 3, depicted on the right. So all 3 of those really in the traditional New England aesthetic with some modern design detailing, but that was overwhelmingly supported as the direction that we went. In terms of the overall site design, and this is an example of the site plan that we had presented at that presentation, there were certainly concerns with traffic, with Route 20 and Southbridge Street, the way that the public would be able to get in and out of the site, the way that the fire department would respond off of the site. We've talked through that at a couple of subsequent building committee meetings, through the chief, the deputy chief, and through their operations, and we've come to a pretty good understanding of the way that this is going to be developed such that it really limits the impact. It's not something that the the fire department believes is going to be a challenge. We will have good signage, we'll have good lighting, good wayfinding, so that it won't be too much of an issue. Those were the main concerns. For the most part, it was a pretty positive response on the site design. And then lastly, we asked about the current building design, and these were 4 views of the building that we had shown and said, what do you like, what don't you like? We want your honest feedback and we want your opinions. There was a discrepancy between a lot of the comments we had. Some people really liked it, some people didn't like it, some people thought it was too modern, some folks thought it wasn't modern enough. But for the most part, a couple of key points really repeated themselves through a number of the comments. It felt a little dark. The flat roof at the front of the building wasn't very appealing or didn't seem to fit really well with the community. It seemed a little too futuristic and too modern looking, and that we really should take a look at the comments on the first slide about going back to a more traditional New England style of architecture. And so we worked with the building committee and provided some alternative designs that address this. One, as an update to the initial design, and then 2, as an alternate design that addressed as many of these concerns as practical. So I'll just go through really quick on some updated floor and site plans, starting with the site plan. There really wasn't a lot of change with this. You know, we spoke with the department and the committee and felt pretty comfortable that site access, wayfinding would all be really reasonably accommodated through this. A lot of the traffic issues on the 2 main roads would be handled through traffic signalization that already exists there, so that wasn't much of a concern. But the one main thing that we did do, and you'll see this repeated through the floor plans, is in an effort to really make the building as efficient as possible, we did look at a couple of program spaces and reduce their overall square footage. So the far left portion of the proposed building, we actually brought that in several feet. We reduced the capacity of the training room, we reduced the size of the fitness room, and ultimately shrank the overall gross square footage of the building. Every square foot that we take out of the building results in dollars saved over the construction of it. So we really just made some value add type decisions. So as a reminder on the site plan, just to go back through this briefly, we got Route 20 down to the south of the plan. This is Prospect Street. Over on the top left, this is the Dunkin' Donuts that's currently being renovated, and the Veterans Memorial to the north. Main public parking would be planned south right here, with our public entry facing Route 20. Off to the bottom right of the site, we would have a small area here, a small plaza that would have some signage. This would be masonry, something that would also provide some vehicle, some protection if a vehicle started to veer off of the roadway or something like that. So providing a little bit of safety through that. We've got a firefighters memorial out to the front of the building here, and then are creating a little bit of a parking lot connection to the Veterans Memorial here as well, which is a little bit underserved. And this project is able to provide a little bit of on-site parking, so that could be better utilized. And then an area here is dashed out as a large piece of green space for future expansion. So we want to develop this project, this site, this building to allow for future growth, so that we're not sort of stuck with what we're building today and don't have room to expand in the future. So this site does anticipate the ability for another municipal purpose on the campus in the future. That could be another municipal use, it could be expansion of the fire department. That's to be determined in the future. Currently, we're programming 71 public parking spaces down here. That's so that we could have maximum usability by the public for the community training room. So that's what's driving the total parking count there. And then we've got a 54 staff parking spaces in the rear of the building as well. And then again, 5 parking spaces to serve the Veterans Memorial. We're also noting an area of the building as additional future growth. So predominantly, this block of the building is a 2-story space. The portion of the building planned north is where the apparatus bays are. So those are tall bay, tall height spaces to the back. But this area here above the training room and the fitness room, those are 1-story spaces. We're not building a 2nd story above that. But we are going to put a composite deck, roof deck there. So what that means is instead of just putting a metal deck and then insulation and roofing. We're actually going to pour concrete over that roof deck such that in 10, 15, 20 years, if the fire department needs more space, as the fire service evolves over time, at a relatively low cost, you'd be able to create an addition and grow vertically in that location with minimal cost. Going to the floor plans, plan left is the ground floor plan, and the plan to the right is the upper level. As you enter in the lobby, this was where I noted the public entrance on the site plan. Off to the left is the community training room. There's a series of spaces that serve that, as well as a large conference room that doubles as a supplement to the Emergency Operations Center. The one big change we made with that is we did reduce the overall size of it a little bit to save some cost, but we also added a room divider so that one large training room can be divided into two smaller training rooms so that the fire department could use one side and the public can use one side. Multiple fire department trainings can happen simultaneously, or the divider can be collapsed and one large meeting can occur in that room. We also took another look at the fitness room and reduced the size of that by about 300 square feet. Other than that, the rest of the plan has not changed. Plan right is most of your administrative functions with the chief's office and his staff. To the north, we've got our apparatus bay, support spaces, decontamination, turnout gear storage. We've got our 4 double deep apparatus bays that house all the equipment that this department is going to need to operate out of. Work rooms, SCBA rooms where they fill the air packs, and then we have a mechanics bay just off to the north. On the second floor, from the bay space, we just have a mezzanine. This can supplement as additional storage for the fire department, as well as additional training that the fire department can do in-house. We've got mechanical and electrical spaces, and then the rest of the plan to the south is their living quarters, bunk rooms, day room, kitchen, and some office space. And again, this is the area designated as future growth that I had alluded to earlier. So quite simply, an exterior walls and another roof can be added to this in the future, built off of that concrete slab, and allow for about 5,000 square feet of future growth should the fire department need it down the road. So we want to take a quick look at some updated renderings based on the community feedback that we received in January. The first option that we're going to look at is an update to the original design that was presented at that meeting. Some of the comments that we had received was it was a little bit too dark and things like that. So we simply lightened up some of the materials on this. The brick was a bit darker as initially rendered. So and then we had a lot more of black metal down low and around some of the other spaces. So we reduced the amount of metal and increased the amount of brick that was going to be shown here. We lightened up the color of brick. And then when we were showing black corrugated metal around the apparatus bays, we lightened that up to a lighter gray. It was also important to the committee that we looked at how this was rendered at night. This is a 24/7, 365 building. The public will be coming here in emergency situations at all hours of the night. And the fire department is going to be using this building at all hours of the night and need to be able to respond to it. So it was important that the committee understood how this would look at night as well. So we did provide that rendering here, showing ample site lighting and then some soffit lighting around the roof structure. But the committee, as well as ourselves, felt that this did not address enough of the community feedback that was received in January. So we wanted to go and create a second option and presented that to the committee about a month ago, and are showing those updates today. And again, this is looking through the lens of some of the other precedent examples that we had presented and updating the design based on some of those cues. So this is the view from Prospect Street. So we've gotten rid of the low sloped large roof that sort of slowly pitched up towards Route 20. We've changed that to a series of gable ends and cross gables. We've added some precast concrete window projections in a couple of areas to just help break up the mass of some of these taller elements. We added some pilasters that help break up some of the longer portions of the facade, and then sort of simplified some of the more complicated detailing that was on the initial option. Felt like this really starts to bring in a little bit more of that New England aesthetic, some more of the pitched roofs. We've got ample opportunities across the apparatus bays and on the south face of a lot of these for future solar installations. And then some of the areas around the apparatus bays where we were originally rendering that with dark colored perforated metal, we're rendering that here with some white or off-white metal, and then some precast banding and surrounds around the overhead doors. And again, this is a view of the officer's entry. Just around the corner, you can see the main public entry. We extended an entry canopy into that so that it defines that entry a little bit more and then gives you a little bit of cover as you're entering the building. So this is us turning the corner. So now our back is to Route 20. These are the office spaces down below. Some of the bunk rooms are up above here. And this is the main public entry into the building just off to the left. The other thing that you'll notice is we have a ground face block band at the base. A little bit more durable material than the brick, a little bit less expensive, but it helps ground the building and really set it down on the site. And then again, looking at how that would render at night as well. So much like the image of the Lexington Fire Headquarters, incorporating some recessed lighting into the gable end soffits, adding some site lighting around the building itself, and then really allowing that to look like that it's sort of open for business 24/7, 365, so that if you ever need to come to the building at any time of day, any time of year for an emergency situation, you know where it is, you know where to go. And then our last slide is just giving an update on the overall project cost. Joe, if you want to take that.
Thanks, Matt. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention the cost of the project. Ultimately, that's the biggest concern for most taxpayers and what the impact would be to each taxpayer as we move forward. Construction costs, we're estimating it right now at $24,800,000. Project development costs were around $5.2 million. We're carrying, and we all know that the tariffs have hit, and you know we don't know the impact on it right now. But to ensure that we're showing our responsibility with this project, we're carrying a contingency of $1 million. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to actually utilize that, but in the event that it does have an effect on any of the materials, and that can go from structural steel all the way to mechanical, electrical equipment, all has some type of impact due to the tariffs that may be imposed. The total project cost is $31 million, of which we've went through a number of different meetings with the Select Board and Finance Committee to allocate $8 million of free cash towards this project. What that means to the taxpayers in the town of Auburn is that your total funding to the public is only going to be $23 million. That significantly helps the overall tax burden on the town, and that's the whole reason why you work so diligently to become so responsible with your funds within the town. Gives you the ability to use it on capital projects. That's as a necessity as you move forward. The medium household tax impact is $186.93, basically $46.73 a quarter for a brand new facility that will be built for the next 50 plus years. The town of Auburn, this isn't a question whether they need it. It's essential for the operation and the services that will be provided from the fire department for the town of Auburn. I think overall, we've taxed the architect, and Matt's done a great job showing any of the efficiencies that we can gain within the program. We met with the department and looked at some of the reductions that we could do on the overall program, but not being short-sighted to the point where we're making cuts unnecessarily just to meet a particular budget and then move into a building that's already too small. They looked at every aspect of this building from the first floor apparatus to the second floor to ensure that we're being responsible and judicially moving forward with ensuring costs are at the lowest that we could possibly do to present to the town. With that, is there another slide after that? With that, we will be doing another presentation to the public, and our goal is to be as transparent and informative as we can. As the questions come in, you know, the department and the town is doing everything in their power to make sure that they get clear, concise, and consistent answers out to the public. The other aspect of it is that we'd like to have at least one more public forum, just to get the message out there that this building's coming, it's needed, and what the other aspects within the building are, and what the cost impacts it might be as we move forward. And I appreciate everybody's time, and any questions are welcome, and send it to the building website, and you'll get those answers relatively quickly. Thank you. Any questions or concerns from the public?
No questions. No questions? Just kill it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.